Hello everybody, this is Fernando for Godzilla Movie News. Yet another entry in my latest podcast. This time I'm going to go over some updated information on Pacific Rim's latest box office results. The reason I'm talking about this is there are various news sources out there, including, let's say, Cool News, Deadline, Superhero Hype, others that are stating that it looks like Pacific Rim is enjoying a second life of sorts on an international basis. They have the film opening in various new markets now, including China, which apparently set a huge record, $9 million on its first opening day, which has not been done before. And it has yet to open in other areas such as Spain, Brazil, and most importantly Japan, which of course China and Japan, these type of films are absolutely catered to. And so because of the second life, Deadline is reporting that there's increased interest with regards to a potential sequel to Pacific Rim, and I wanted to give my thoughts on that. For starters, there was no doubt that this film would have a second life on the international market. A lot of Hollywood movies these days actually are catered to the international market. I mean, one just has to look at the latest Fast and Furious movie to see how successful that particular formula is. When you have something that scores 2 to 3, maybe 4 times as much money on an international market as here in the U.S., then you absolutely can see why so many films today don't really cater anymore to the U.S. crowd. While it is important still to keep a focus here in the U.S. and the U.S. population, it's more of a bonus of some sort. I guess you could call it the cherry on top, rather than it being the main focus. And so because of this, it looks like Pacific Rim is enjoying some success overseas. To give you a perspective, again, here in the States, I think it's barely in its $80 million range or so, but it's already made more than that on an overseas market. So that's why there's talk that, there just maybe there'll be a sequel. But actually, my thought is that there still won't be a sequel to this film, only because of the huge costs involved in this first film, and then of course the subsequent costs, if not even bigger cost, with any larger sequel. I don't know if much of y'all were aware of this, but Pacific Rim cost a boatload of money to make for a film that never had a major star in it. In other words, a Hollywood star that would be commanding $20 to $30 million, which is already a huge chunk of the film, and followed by other stars that would cost even more. This film doesn't have any major star. If anything, what they spent on their stars was probably the least expensive thing throughout the whole movie. But even then, it took nearly $200 million to produce this entire film. $200 million is no chump change. To give you a perspective, a movie like Iron Man 3, which does have a bunch of stars in them, including one of the highest paid stars in Hollywood right now with Robert Downey Jr., that one cost the same amount as money as Pacific Rim. And yet you have one that's making $1.2 billion total, and that still doesn't include anything as far as upcoming video and anything involving DVD Blu-ray sales. And then you have Pacific Rim that is, again, nickel and diming up the ladder when it comes to its foreign take. So this is how the way movie companies work when it comes to the revenue they gather. Every time here in the U.S. a movie is out or released, it averages about 50% take when it comes to what the theaters obtain from the movie. Sometimes they're larger during the first number of weeks, sometimes they're less. It all depends on the agreement that the studios made with the theaters. And then as the movie, let's say, stays longer in theaters, the take that the movie theaters obtain either becomes less or more, again depending on the specific type of movie deal that the studios made. But all in all, by the time a movie finishes its run in U.S. theaters, it generally averages to about 50%. So what that means then is, let's say a movie costs $100 million to make, then here in the U.S., if it wanted to break even, it wouldn't have to make $100 million. It would actually have to make $200 million just to break even. Again, because if one considers the 50% take that movie theaters have, then just to break even, you would have to do double what the movie cost. Now, what's interesting to find out is that China actually has a much more stringent, I guess you could call it, revenue source for U.S. releases. And it's probably very reminiscent of other international markets. Rather than 50% take, it seems like these international markets actually take 75% of revenue. And again, I don't have the full details, but China is in that field, and probably it's presumable that Japan is in that field as well. And so what happens is, if you have a movie that's being released overseas, it can do a lot more with regards to its, let's say, box office revenue. But that just means that there's going to be more taken away from the theater in terms of what it pays for the distribution within that country. I don't know if that includes also what the theaters make. I presumably it does. So total, again, consider about 50 to 75% take of what each movie is released in each country is what the movie loses, essentially. So taking that into consideration, there's also the fact that Pacific Rim, again, besides having a $200 million budget, also has a purported marketing budget of $175 million. $175 million is huge, absolutely huge, especially considering how little it seemed to have been promoted all the way up to, let's say, 2 months out. Remember in my past video, I described that one of the biggest criticisms I had with the way Pacific Rim was handled was that it was so secretive that very little stuff was actually shown to audiences up until just a few months. So why it cost $175 million to show so little? Again, it shows the negligence that the marketing department had. So when you add 175 plus 200, that's 375 million, and let's take the roundabout 50% figure, then you're talking about a movie having to do about $750 million to $800 million total just to break even. Again, if we're using the 50% figure. So again, Pacific Rim could be making some good money overseas, but statistically and figuratively, in a general manner speaking, it would have to make somewhere around $700 to $800 million to gross even when you include all the costs. Is it going to make that much? I don't think so. It could when you include eventually all the revenue and all the DVD and all the on-demand and all the televised showings, in all the years here down the road. But up front, no. And that's why I think that there is not going to be a sequel to this movie, despite the, I guess, good reviews that the film is getting on there. So again, the stories you were reading out there with regards to Pacific Rim and getting a potential sequel, I think there's a lot of high hope, but at the end of the day, I just think it's hope. I don't think it'll translate to a sequel itself. Share your thoughts below, though. What do you think? Do you don't think that the movie is going to get a sequel? Do you think that eventually the international market will produce so much that it's all but inevitable? We'll see. So, alright, everybody. Thanks as always.